If you're here, you've likely wanted to read more books in the past and haven't quite gotten as far as you planned. Today I'll give you 10 tips on how to read more books. For reference, this year I've read 82 so far, and I still have 2 weeks left in 2020, and I'm hoping to get over 85 books this year. Tip number 1 is to read one book at a time. Now, I know there are some people out there who can be reading like 8 books simultaneously, and if that really works for you and you know that works for you, then go for it. I find that it helps me to focus on the one book that I'm on and to push through, especially if it's long, if it's kind of going slowly, or if it's not that interesting, then it's actually a great motivator to know that to get to the next book that I really want to read, I have to get through this one first. Tip number 2, choose a goal for completion. This isn't hard and fast, it's just kind of a ballpark. Now by now, I know whether a book is going to take me kind of 2 days or more like 5 or 6 days to read, but get a little bit of a feel for that and set a little small goal for yourself to shoot for. It's been proven that even if we create a somewhat artificial deadline, that improves human productivity. Number 3, be open-minded on book topics. Try and listen to what the author is saying in between the lines, and don't just limit yourself to an echo chamber of your own beliefs. I think this is a really interesting way that we can open up and learn new things and new perspectives, and it can keep things fresh. Number 4, vary genres. The rhythm I'm in is about 6 nonfiction books to every 1 fiction book. Within those nonfiction books, I rotate between business, leadership, science, biographies, and a few other kind of general genres, and I find that it keeps me motivated because things are always changing a little bit. Tip number 5 is to create a routine around listening. Removing the element of decision fatigue and knowing that whenever you do a certain activity, you'll listen to a book really helps you to be consistent. Let it just be a foregone conclusion that whatever that activity is includes your book. Obviously, this works the best with audiobooks, but it could also work with physical books depending on your location, the time of day, or other factors. I personally listen so predictably in my truck that my phone actually pops up with a suggestion that I go ahead and open the Libby app, which is the app that I use to listen to all the audiobooks with. Whenever I get in the truck and the audio system connects, it knows that's what's coming. Some examples of these kind of habitual activities that you could include specifically with audiobooks are washing dishes, running, walking, exercising in the gym, driving, doing laundry, manual labor, landscaping, in the shower, or anything else similar to those activities. Number 6, lean on your wish list. You may have a few books on your list and you can get started, get through those, and then not know where you're going next. Don't run out of ideas and don't run out of books. Make a list or a couple different lists that you can draw from whenever it's time to start a new book. I like to categorize my list by subject matter so that I know if I'm in the mood for an entrepreneurial book, I can go right to that list and pick one out of there, versus if I'm interested in a fiction book, I can access that list. Tip number 7, sacrifice the competing noise. For a lot of us, this could be music, could be the radio, or for a lot of people, it's podcasts now. With a few exceptions, I feel like the information that you gather from a book and the experience that you have overall exceeds a podcast. Also, somewhat counterintuitively, I feel like the information delivery of a book is actually more condensed than a podcast. Even though books are longer than podcasts, by the time you work in all of the ad reads, the conversation back and forth, and all the kind of intros and outros, there's a lot of wasted time in podcasts. Number 8, data. For me, tracking the number of books I've read and their rating has really gamified a not very game-like hobby. I've got a little spreadsheet where I lay out the book that I've read, the author, and then the rating that I gave it. And my rating system is really simple, 0 through 4, 0 being terrible, 4 being everyone should read this. Tip number 9, talk about what you read with other people. Even if you don't like the book, I think this is a valuable habit to work into your book reading routine. Whenever we're forced to summarize information that we've taken in, it challenges us to put it in our own words, and it actually helps us to digest that information and then remember it longer. Tip number 10 is specifically for audiobook listeners. Always listen at an increased speed. This is a great way to save a lot of time and increase your productivity. Typically for a book that is really complicated or interesting, or the subject matter is super rich and I really love it, I'll slow down and I'll go down to about 1.5 times speed. For books with the least interesting subject matter that are produced well and read clearly, I sometimes get as high as 2.3 times speed. And you've got to find the right balance for you. I typically choose to listen to fiction books slower than nonfiction books because typically a fiction book has an intentional cadence to the dialogue and the voice actors do a really good job conveying conversations and tension and other things, where a nonfiction book doesn't really have those elements habits to include. Here's a great quote that I found in a James Clear weekly newsletter. If you don't know, James Clear is an author of an awesome book called Atomic Habits. He also sends out a weekly newsletter that's really valuable. So if you're looking for a book on habits to read, then I would start there, especially if you've got like a New Year's resolution or something that you want to start. It's an incredible book, the best book on habits I've ever read. This quote is by inventor and writer Lin Yutang from his book The Importance of Living, and it's about the magic of reading. Listen to this. Compare the difference between the life of a man who does no reading and that of a man who does. The man who has not the habit of reading is imprisoned in his immediate world in respect to time and space. His life falls into a set routine. He is limited to contact and conversation with a few friends and acquaintances, and he sees only what happens in his immediate neighborhood. From this prison, there is no escape. But the moment he takes up a book, he immediately enters a different world. And if it is a good book, he is immediately put in touch with one of the best talkers of the world. This talker leads him on and carries him into a different country or a different age, or unburdens to him some of his personal regrets, or discusses with him some special line or aspect of life that the reader knows nothing about. An ancient author puts him in communion with a dead spirit of long ago, and as he reads along, he begins to imagine what that ancient author looked like and what type of person he was. Now, to be able to live 2 hours out of 12 in a different world and take one's thoughts off the claims of the immediate present is, of course, a privilege to be envied by people shut up in their bodily prison. I never felt this way about reading. Never in my life until this year. And I now understand why people fall in love with reading. If you haven't gotten there yet and you struggle to finish books, I feel like these tips can really help you to get through more books and to learn to appreciate them more overall. Because we really are kind of trapped in this little microcosm of our own mind and our own environment. And a book is this heavily researched, heavily thought out, very intentional piece of writing that allows you to slip into someone else's mind for a little while. And that's an incredible thing. And the fact that you can access them totally for free through your public library, and then the app that accesses that is called Libby, a completely free app, and I have no incentive in telling you about it. I get nothing from this except that you now get to read and read books for free. I just love it, and I think it's a really powerful thing. I hope you read more books in the future. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to invest in the like button. Thanks. Bye.